Welcome, everyone. Let's welcome the author, Robert Johansson.
Thank you, Rob. Good to see you here. We're going to talk about forgiveness tonight. I think I'm going to start with a story. I worked at the VA hospital for 30 years. Early in my career there, I was working in social work. And I would need to go to the file room to look up records on a regular basis. And I got to know a little old lady there. Her name was Lou Lulai. That was her married name. Her parents didn't name her that. But I happened to know someone who was in the volunteer department who was essentially a boss. She was a little old lady, was a volunteer, and she came in every day into the file room. And you know, they have the most prestigious jobs for volunteers, right? No, she was putting together records for new people coming into the hospital. It was a monotonous, boring job. But she was happy to be there. She was delighted to do what she called helping her boys. And who were her
Yeah.
boys? Any veteran who happened to come into the
So then
hospital,
one with
those were her boys.
voted like, yeah, doing great. Really work on your guns. It's got a funny
We getting
face.
feedback?
Okay, was it, that you just had to keep whipping it in the compactor and cycling?
Yeah, I mean, it
whipping
looks
again?
bad, but once you throw a few in there, it's like, it takes 10 minutes.
Oh,
But it is
How
kind of
does it
rough.
take the cycle?
anyway, I got to know Lou. And she was a sweet lady who came in every day and helped in the file. And I got to know her over a while. I'd stop and talk to her, and she would brighten your day. She was always happy, loved being there, helping out. And the interesting thing about her was she never talked about the past. She always was right there today with you. Whatever's going on right now, or who she saw today, or somebody she talked to, was always in the present. Since I knew her boss, I learned some things about her. I found out that her husband had been a patient in the VA hospital, and he had died there a year earlier. But I didn't find that out from her. I found that out from somebody else, because she never talked about her late husband. She never talked about him dying there. She never talked about being alone after however many years of marriage. She never complained about anything. She was always happy, focused on whatever she could do to help. And it was, I enjoyed seeing her. Sometimes I'd give her a little hug. Sometimes maybe massage her shoulders, because it was work where you'd get stiff after a while. And she enjoyed seeing me, and I enjoyed seeing her. About a year later, Lou passed. And I met this friend who was essentially her boss. I said, I heard that Lou passed. That's really too bad. And her response was not what I expected at all. She said, oh, do you think so? And then she said, how old do you think Lou was? I really had no idea. I knew she was old enough to be retired and be able to volunteer at the hospital regularly. She said, I think she had a pretty full life. Well, I guess so. You're the one to tell me. And she said, how old do you think Lou was? And then she told me, Lou was 96 years old when she died. Coming into the hospital every day, Monday through Friday, working regularly at 96. But she was also always focused on the present. I never heard her complain. And I wondered, what was her secret? To still be up and active and energetic at 96. And my guess is that she had mastered this. She was able to forgive and let go of the past because she never brought up anything from the past. So that was a pretty clear indication to me that that's what was going on with Lou. All right. So we're going to start talking about forgiveness by discussing what it isn't. Some of us have learned to think about forgiveness through the eyes of the legal system, or more technically, a pardon. And that is one definition of forgiveness, isn't it? A pardon. But there's some problems with that. First of all, when we think about forgiveness that way, we're imagining the person being forgiven is the one who's really benefiting. They get off the hook. They get away with something. They're not held accountable. So we think of them as the main beneficiary. And if we benefit in any way, it's because we're a good guy. We did something good. But they're the one who's really getting the main benefit. The second thing in the legal definition is it justifies whatever anger we had toward that other person. Because we see them in the wrong and we see ourselves as the victim. And if I'm the victim, I don't have to change anything because that was the person that caused all the problems. So I'm right, they're wrong. I don't have to take any responsibility for what happened. And that's the second problem with this model. The third thing is, if they're going to benefit, somehow I have to demonstrate to them that I've forgiven them, or they don't get that benefit, right? They have to know that I've forgiven them and let that issue, whatever it was, go. So this is what happens if we're using the legal model. First, we're going to justify our own anger or disappointment or frustration or whatever we felt over what happened. And that actually helps us maintain our bad feelings about it rather than resolve them. Second thing is it keeps us stuck in the role of victim. So instead of thinking about what was my role in what happened And what could I do differently? All the blame is laid on them. I don't have to do anything. And if I'm the victim and I don't do anything, that means I'm setting myself up to be victimized again. And that's exactly what happens many times. To people that become victims, they're victimized over and over again because they've never changed their behavior. They're still doing what set them up for the problem in the first place. Third problem is I can't prove it to them if they're no longer around. Lots of things that have happened to us, the people that did whatever they did are no longer in our lives. Maybe they've died. Maybe they moved away. Maybe we moved away. They're no longer around us. We can't prove anything to them. So that's not going to work. The last thing is, when we think about forgiveness, the most important person to forgive isn't anybody out there anyway. Most important person to forgive is ourselves. I don't know if you've thought about it, but I've never heard of anybody taking anybody to court saying my younger self did this to me. I'm going to sue myself for it. Doesn't even make any sense, does it? So the whole model kind of falls apart when we start looking at it critically. If we think about forgiveness in terms of maintaining or letting go of the past, the two pictures here kind of represent that. The fist would be holding on to the past, and the open hand would be letting go. Which do you think takes more of your energy? Absolutely. So the first thing we lose by not forgiving is some of our own energy. If you think about some of the older people, you know, they might walk around kind of like this because they're burdened by all that stuff they're still carrying around. Or it may show up with lots of physical ailments that they're carrying around as a result of all this old stuff they've never resolved. So I'm going to lose some of my energy. The second thing that happens is I'm going to keep getting reminded of whatever those old hurts were. How does that happen? 100 different ways. I run into somebody with the same first name. That could be a trigger, right? Or the same last name. Or the same accent. Or they use a phrase that that person often used. Or here's one that really brings up the past. They wear the same perfume or cologne as that person did. Come on in, guys. Smells often trigger memories, don't they? So it could happen in all kinds of different ways. The hair looks like the person. Color eyes. Or even just a feeling that they're dealing with you in the same way as that person dealt with you. So what happens when I get triggered by the past? Well, I can tell you what happened to me. After I came back from Vietnam, every time I heard a helicopter, there was a cringe inside. Why would that happen? Because I worked in a VAC hospital. Every time a helicopter came in, I was wounded. And I saw the wounded people. I went out into the wards to draw blood, whatever. So I saw the people missing limbs with burns on half or more of their body. I knew what those helicopters meant. It took about 2 years after I got back from Vietnam before I didn't have that cringe inside every time I'd hear a helicopter. So kind of in the same way, when we get reminded of our old hurts, something changes inside of us. And it's automatic. I don't have any control over it. If I'm still hanging on to that old thing, I'm going to feel those same emotions all over again. If I was angry, I'll feel angry again. If I was disappointed, I'm going to feel disappointed again. If I was frustrated, that same feeling of frustration will come back. Whatever it was I was carrying in the past, I'm going to relive it. But instead of working on it and resolving it, letting it go, I may have to relive it hundreds of times. And who put me in this prison? To relive some of my worst memories over and over? I did it to myself. So we're not in charge of our emotions. They're going to come automatically and they're not going to be fun ones. And we get to have them over and over again. When we're hanging on to old stuff, we tend to recreate similar situations in our lives over again. I worked in recovery for a lot of years and learned that women who grow up in an alcoholic family quite often marry an alcoholic. Well, that makes absolutely no sense whatsoever, does it? And yet it happens over and over again. Why does it happen?
Next to them.
Unconsciously, they're still trying to fix that parent
Classic rock.
through their spouse. So they're recreating the former scenario by creating it all over again. Even though that was the last thing you would expect for them to be dealing with another alcoholic because of all the trauma in the past from that. You would think they would absolutely stay away from that. But unfortunately, it happens a lot. So whatever we haven't resolved, we tend to recreate and deal with it again. It'll be a new person. Won't be the same person probably as the old one, but it'll be the same feelings all over again. So if we're going to forgive, we got to find a way for a new way to think about this and deal with the past so we're not recreating it. Some of you have heard of mindfulness. the ability to be in the here and now. If we're hanging on to lots of old stuff, we don't have that ability, do we? It's kind of like we have a ship with a number of anchors out. We turn on the engines and try to go, and what happens?
Down.
We're anchored. We run the engines and we don't go anywhere, right? Because we've got all the anchors tying us to the past. If we can move past all that stuff and pull the anchors up, then we have that chance for mindfulness, for being actually in the here and now and dealing just with what's going on in the moment and not recreating the past all over again. By the way, mindfulness is more than just being in the moment. It's also being non-judgmental at the moment, simply experiencing what's going on right now rather than deciding what it means. You're there for the experience. So let's compare these old emotional wounds to a physical one. So let's imagine that you cut yourself and you're bleeding. What's the first thing you want to do? Yeah, you want to stop the bleeding, don't you? When I was a teenager, I was going to take a frame for a window and to get the glass replaced, and I was pulling out some of the window fragments and I cut my wrist on one of the pieces of glass. So the first thing you wanted to do then is wrap it up and stop the bleeding, right? In that case, I had to go in and get it stitched up. But that's kind of what the steps we take for a major physical one. We'll initially stop the bleeding, and then we'll maybe go see a doctor or nurse or somebody who can help us with it, right? And the first thing they're going to do is what?
Beat it out.
Well, first they have to unwrap it, don't they? But let's just imagine you went to the doctor and they said, now we need to unwrap this and see what we've got. You said, no, don't unwrap it, just fix
You fix it, right?
it. They would say, are you nuts? How am I going to do anything with it, but it's all wrapped up? And yet, people have told you to do exactly that with your emotional wounds. They've told you just let go of them. Just forget about it. Just put it in the past where it belongs. Well, you can't. It's still wrapped up. But our emotional wounds, what are they wrapped up with? The feelings. Yes, exactly. We've wrapped them up with whatever feelings are connected to them. So if we're going to get rid of them, the first step is unwrapping. And how are we going to do that? Well, we call that processing. So one way we process is by talking about what happened, huh? And should you just pick anybody to talk about what happened?
Can't decide what happened.
What do you want to look for in somebody who you're going to process stuff with?
Someone you see as emotional support or someone you trust.
A therapist would be good. Somebody you trust would be good. But the main thing, their main job is just to listen. That's all it is. Just to listen and be supportive of you, to help you process. That's all it takes. Somebody to be there for you. Unfortunately, everybody can't do that, can they? Some people want to fix it for you. Some people tell you not to feel the way you feel. That's not helpful, is it? So we got to choose carefully when we do processing, if we're going to talk about it. Another thing we could do is writing about what happened. And what do we call that?
Journaling?
Yes, absolutely. So a diary is a record of what happens. Journaling is writing about how we felt about what was going on in our lives. So that's another way to process, is to put it on paper. Did you know that most of our great literature has come out of people doing that? Exactly that process. They processed what they've gone through. They put it on paper. They made it into a story, and we read it, don't we? There are lots of other ways to process as well. When I worked with veterans with PTSD, one of the things that they found especially therapeutic was painting the scenes from their emotional turmoil times. So that's another way to express your feelings through any of the arts, not just painting. It could be music. I think of Eric Clapton. Do you know the story? He made a song about talking to his, was he 4 or 5 years old? His son was playing, chasing around, and went right through a window and fell to his death. So he wrote a song about that. Would you know my name if I saw you in heaven? Sound familiar? So that's another way to process, is through any of the arts. But the idea is you got to unwrap it somehow. You got to release the emotions. You got to let them out. Holding on to them isn't going to work. So we unwrap. We find sometimes you got to use more than one. You talk about it, you write about it, you do things. Even physical exercise is good for releasing emotions. They did research on people who get regular exercise, and guess what they found? They have less stress. So even though they probably didn't exercise to get rid of their stress, that was a byproduct.
Very less stress because of it.
So somehow they're releasing emotions by doing physical exercise. So lots of ways to do it, but we got to release them. For some people, prayer is a way of talking about it. Some people think you have to talk to God in a certain way. But I don't think that's true. I think God accepts us just where we're at. So talking to God about what happened is another way if you don't have somebody around. Meditation can also be very helpful if you learn to do that, to help us work on the process. All that stuff we've wrapped up whatever it is. But let's say we've done that. We've done the unwrapping now. Got good at that. And we're ready for the final step. What's the final step in forgiveness? Yeah, that's where we want to get to. But the step to get there is we've got to change our mind about what happened. We have to reframe that experience in some new way. So for those PTSD veterans that I was mentioning earlier, they went through all this trauma in the Vietnam War. But they found a way to reframe it because in our groups, they found there were other Vietnam veterans that also had PTSD and they could support one another. And that support was more meaningful, more critical, because there's somebody who's gone through something very similar to what I went through. And they understand and they can support me in it. So that reframe, seeing what I went through is going to help my buddy here change the way they're looking at and thinking about what happened to them. So they began looking at it in a new, healthier way, instead of just seeing the negative aspects. So these are some ideas to kind of help us reframe some of the old hurts that we've got. So when we normally think of progress, we imagine it's this steady line moving up toward things getting better, right? That the way it works? Or is it 3 steps forward and 2 steps back?
Forward one.
Yeah, it kind of goes up and down, doesn't it? And hopefully it ends up someplace better. But there are missteps along the way, aren't there? We go back and forth and we have our good days and bad days. And sometimes we're doing really well. And sometimes we're really just having a bad day. Well, one thing we can imagine is that person that we've held this grudge against, they might have just been having a really bad day that day. I don't know if they were or not, but I was imagining before that they did this on purpose and they were really trying to hurt me. That may not have been the case at all. It's possible they were just really having a bad day and they took it out on us. Well, who do we take out bad days on?
Around us.
Whoever is close, that's right. Whoever's handy gets it. And so that isn't a case of them necessarily being bad. It's really just a case of bad timing, and timing was off. So that's one possibility. Second idea is the idea that we're always doing the best we're capable of at that time. That sounds like a Pollyanna-ish kind of idea, isn't it? Everybody's always doing their best. Well, let's put the shoe on the other foot. The other side is that person was intentionally screwing up their life. Well, who goes around doing that? Nobody does that intentionally, do they? Now, they may not have all the information they need. They may be confused about the facts. They may have things all messed up in their head, but it doesn't mean they aren't doing the best they can. Otherwise, we're imagining they're messing up their life on purpose, and that doesn't make any sense at all. So if we know sometimes we've screwed up, even though we were trying to do our best, didn't always work, huh? Maybe we can give the other person that benefit of the doubt too, and we don't always know what's going on with the other person, do we? We imagine we do. But we may not know that that person just got fired from their job. That their partner just walked out on. We may not know what the other person's going through at all. And assume it's about us when it really had very little to do with us at all. Just happened to be there when something bad was taking place. So it's another way to change our mind and reframe it and think about it in a different way. The last idea is one you may not have thought about before, because we have this in our vocabulary where we say, now why did I do that? I knew better than that. Or why'd you do that? You knew better than to do it that way. And when I think about this, I remember my own upbringing. My dad was a good Swede. What does that mean? That means he was stoic. I could count on my one hand the number of times I hadn't seen him show any emotions. And interestingly enough, I treasured those moments.
Because they
Because-
happen rarely.
Not only did they happen rarely, they were precious to me because I actually saw feelings connected to my father. And when my kids were born, I said, I'm not going to do that. So I would tuck them into bed every night, give them a hug, tell them I loved them. That was the routine every day. Got to be the norm. They expected it, and that's just what's happening. So then I decided, well, I can tell my kids I love them. Why can't I tell my dad that I love him? Well, I knew what I wanted to do. I had a clear picture in my mind. I went back to Minnesota to tell him, what do you think happened? Words got up this far and they didn't come up any further. Because I had absolutely no experience sharing feelings with my dad. I had lots of experience by then with my kids.
A little different with the roles reversed.
But it didn't generalize as I expected it. It took 3 trips to Minnesota before I finally did it.
That was the best trip of all.
Interestingly enough, he couldn't respond. And it wasn't until he had cancer and knew he only had a few months left that he gave himself permission to tell his kids that he loved them.
He kept telling himself every day, not permission.
So knowing how to do it and being able to do it are not the same thing. And often we extract that on ourselves and one another, and we're not seeing the reality. Just knowing how to do it, you got to have the experience behind it. It's like telling a football player, this is a play you're gonna run, but they've never practiced it. Takes a lot of practice to actually be able to follow through and do it, right? So the same thing is true in life. So this is another way we can reframe it for ourselves to give ourselves and other people permission to maybe not be able to do everything just because we know how to do it. So let's say we've done it. We've worked through this. We've forgiven the past. What about that other person? Because what we've been talking about here doesn't necessarily involve the other person at all, does it? If I'm talking to a friend about what happened, or if I'm writing about it, or if I'm making a song or painting a picture, whatever I've been doing, doesn't necessarily involve the other person at all, does it? It's just me processing my own stuff.
Therapy won't be you.
So even if you never see the other person, you can still forgive and let go and get rid of it, huh? But for some people, the question remains, if I've really let go of it, should I reestablish contact with this person? And there's no simple answer to that. In some cases, you can't. It's not possible. In other cases, you've got to make a decision, whether it's appropriate or not, if you want to or not. Reconciliation is a decision to make. It's not a requirement of forgiveness. So part of that decision might be, has the person changed at all? Are they still doing the things they did then? Or are they doing something different in their life now? In the case of the recovering alcoholics and addicts I worked with, when they went back to make their amends, they had made changes in their lives. They weren't doing the same manipulative behavior to support their habit anymore. And they were ready to start writing a new chapter in their lives. Huh? So their behavior had changed. But that doesn't mean that the other person is going to accept them. I saw lots of people disappointed when they went back to family members and tried to reconcile, and they'd been written off. In other cases where the family was happy to welcome them back in once they saw that their behavior had changed. So if you're going to reconcile with someone or decide about it, you need to look at what's going on with that person currently in their lives. And what are the circumstances? I know of people that have divorced that have said, I not want nothing to do with that person anymore. They said all these horrible things to me, which is probably true. And I know of other people that said, well, I have to maintain a relationship. We have children in common. So I want to be able to talk to this person and deal with them as a parent of our children. So it depends on the circumstances. It depends on whether the person's behavior has changed. It depends on your feelings about it. There's no cut and dried answer to that. It'll depend a lot, and you may want to think about it a lot or talk it over with people that you trust. When I worked in recovery, I got very familiar with the Alcoholics Anonymous so-called Big Book. And one of the things they recommend when you're holding a grudge against someone is to pray for them. And that's another way to work on letting go of it. Actually praying for the person, wishing them something better than what happened in the past. I mentioned meditation earlier. That's another way to help us change the way we're looking and thinking about things. But you can't learn to meditate in a couple of days. You usually start by practicing for 5 or 10 minutes. And then as you get better at it, you can extend it longer. You don't have to meditate for hours though. If you're good at it, 20 minutes a day is probably plenty of time if you wanted to take it up. Sometimes we think that we've forgiven the past. We imagine that we've let go of something. And something happens and we find out, boy, that still hurts. I thought I was all done with that, huh? Have you had that experience? Well, how do we know? Yeah, if you still have a strong reaction, you know that you haven't really finished working on it. So that's really the key to knowing whether you're done with something or not. So let's imagine that something comes up that reminds you of it. So you pay attention to your own response. Does it bring up the old hurt? Does it reenact those feelings? Or, oh, I remember that. That's something that happened. If that's your reaction, you probably already have taken care of it. It's just something in the past. Or even better, this is what I learned from that situation. This is what I took away from it. It helped me understand this or see that, or know I shouldn't be doing this or that or the other thing, or how better to handle a situation that got me in trouble before. Now I'm handling it better. That's even better, huh? Because I've learned something and I've gained something. Even if it was a very unpleasant experience, it gave me something, huh? Like those vets who were able to help one another because they'd been through something similar, even though it was tragic. But sometimes when we work on our stuff, we figure out, gee, it really wasn't all their fault. Part of the blame was me and the way I dealt with them and my tone of voice, my response to them, whatever it might be. We recognize that we had some responsibility for what went wrong between the two of us. And if that's the case, then we do want to make amends for our part. Many people have told me when they do that, the other person is freed up to make amends for their part as well. But that may or may not happen. But if you figure out that you have some responsibility, taking that on and clearing that clears your own conscience, regardless how they respond or what they do as a reaction to that. There's some things that happen to us are much worse than normal life issues. Those PTSD clients, they have really serious trauma. And unfortunately, even in this society, we know that at least 25% of our women have experienced sexual abuse. And that may be an underestimate because often it doesn't get reported. Those kinds of trauma situations, whether sexual abuse, physical abuse, severe trauma, gunshot wounds, things like that, therapy is probably the best solution. But the unfortunate truth is not all therapists are trained to deal with serious trauma. I'm hoping that's better today. When I was first trained to deal with trauma stuff, it was a rarity. Hopefully it's better today. I don't know. I guess I'd have to survey all the counseling schools and see what they're doing today to prepare people. But I know of some things that actually work. EMDR, eye movement, desensitization, and reprogramming been researched and shown to be helpful for dealing with trauma. Neuro-linguistic programming, I used myself very successfully many times with clients. That's a process of reviewing the memory from a safe distance and then doing something called reparenting, where you go back and take the role as a parent to take care of your younger self. I've had very good results with that. Trauma incident reduction, I learned about. I never liked it. You keep going over it till it gets so tired of it, you throw it out.
Repetition by.
Well, not a very elegant solution because the person is re-traumatized in the process. But
Just replay it until you forget.
I've had therapists swear by it. And thought field therapy. How many of you have heard of thought field therapy? Okay, well, we're going to learn about it tonight. Thought field therapy and emotional freedom techniques are two I've used very successfully with lots of clients. And they're wonderful at releasing emotions. That processing things, they work very well. So we're going to learn how to do that tonight. And we're going to use the one that focuses specifically on forgiveness. Who wants to pass these out for me? Come on up.
expecting them to be big heads.
So EFT, I actually went to a seminar where psychologist Larry Nims was there teaching us how to do it. But all of these techniques developed from the one on the other side called thought field therapy, which was developed by Roger Callahan. And he used acupressure points to help people release stuff. Initially, it was used for acute reactions, phobias. And then they figured out it had a much broader range than just dealing with phobias. So what I'd like to do is get a volunteer who wants to work on something tonight, and we'll practice, and you can all follow along. Who has an issue they want to work on tonight?
I volunteer, but I don't know what I want to put. Fear of change. That's something?
Pardon?
Fear of change.
Fear of change. We could, you can use it for that, but I want something more specific than that.
What is
Okay.
something?
Oh, anything bad that's happened that you want to forgive?
Do I have to go up
Yes, I put it on.
Yeah.
I will. Can we take my paper? Very scared now.
So what we're going to do is some tapping. And it's very gentle, but it's going to use some of your acupressure points. Are you comfortable with that? Okay.
Mom told me that you do this. She made me do it. I had a panic attack once and I did it and it actually worked quite well. So-
Okay. So then why don't you take your glasses off? They're going to be kind of, okay. So the first thing is just to get in your mind what you want to work on. And you don't have to tell us if you don't want to. It's up to you.
I don't know how I do this without saying it. I want to forgive my dad
Okay.
for whatever he's done, all that he's done.
All right. So we're gonna go through the handout. And we can do it, why don't we just have you repeat what I'm saying? And I'll tap, okay? So I'm eliminating all of the sadness. And all of the roots. And the deepest cause of all of this problem. I'm eliminating all of the fear. And all of the roots. And the deepest cause of all of this problem. Okay? Now I'm gonna take your hand just on the side of the fingernail. I'm eliminating all of the anger
I'm eliminating all of the anger
and all of its roots
and all of its roots.
and the deepest cause of all of this problem.
It's caused all of this.
Okay. Back to the eyebrow. I'm eliminating all the emotional trauma
I am
and all of its roots,
and all of its roots,
the deepest cause of all of this problem.
cause of all its problems.
So if we were doing this in a session, I would just keep repeating those 4 steps.
Cause like doing that would probably release all the pain that you built up.
Until you tell me that it's done. So we just keep repeating those 4 steps. So it's not that hard, right?
Not that hard. The thing is that if you have like such a grudge against someone, or you're not ready to forgive someone, it would take a while.
Yeah, you have to be willing to let it go, and that's not,
I'm willing, or else I wouldn't have brought him up.
so. Let's just imagine we've done this as many times as necessary, rather than going through it multiple times.
We don't want to be here.
So now we're gonna tap just on the inside of this nail, your index finger just next to the thumb, okay? And I want you to say, I forgive myself for having this problem,
I forgive myself for having this problem,
knowing I was doing the best I could.
knowing I was doing the best I could.
And again, I forgive myself for having this problem,
I forgive myself for having this problem,
knowing I was doing the best I could.
doing the best I could.
And one more time. I forgive myself for having this problem,
I forgive myself for having this problem,
knowing I was doing the best I could.
knowing I was doing the best I could.
Okay, and then I forgive them,
I forgive them,
knowing they were doing the best they could.
knowing they were doing the best they could.
And I forgive them,
And I forgive them,
knowing they were doing the best they could.
knowing they were doing the best they could.
One more time, I forgive them,
I forgive them,
knowing they were doing the best they could.
knowing they were doing the best they could.
And this last one might surprise some of us. I forgive God,
I forgive God,
knowing God's love has always been there for me
knowing God's love
in spite of these issues.
in spite of these issues.
And again, I forgive God,
I forgive God,
knowing God's love has always been there for me
knowing God's love has always been there for me
in spite of these issues.
in spite of these issues.
And one more time, I forgive God,
I forgive God,
knowing God's love has always been there for me
knowing God's love
in spite of these issues.
in spite of these issues.
Okay, and now we got one last thing to do. And we're gonna go to the collarbone. So right next to the neck, where the collarbone sticks out a little bit there.
This is very ticklish right now. Trying not to laugh.
And we say, I am eliminating the roots and the deepest cause of this problem. And also anything that would make me keep this problem, ever take it back, ever allow it to come back, permit it to come back, or passively receive it back.
I'll possibly do that. I have to repeat that 2 more times. Stick with me. It felt like a cat with baking biscuits on me.
All right. Thank you very much. So that is emotional freedom technique. We shortened the first part rather than doing it multiple times, but if I were actually doing it with a client, we'd go through until they felt like they'd released all of it and processed those emotions and were feeling much better, huh? And this one is unique in having the forgiveness process built into it. And the global reversal statement, I've never heard of anything like that in any other therapy. That's pretty wild, though. Telling the problem it has no permission to come back in any form. Now, some people might have problems with the God part. If they did, I would recommend using the original thought field therapy on the other side and practicing that instead. But personally, I prefer the EFT process because of the forgiveness process built in and its usefulness. Everybody feel like they understood clearly how the steps go with that?
Dental chair, my dentist. And they, his aide, his assistant was tapping.
Really?
I told him. And I said, Robert's been, but it mentally, it worked.
It calmed you down?
Mhm.
Very cool.
Perfect. If Rich could get questions, fine.
I was wondering, does it mean you have a bigger like grudge or something against someone if it takes longer to forgive them after doing that? Because saying I forgive myself and I forgive them, like you made it feel quicker. I don't know what I'm trying to ask you. Do I like have less of a grudge against him because it felt so easy and quick? Like no.
Maybe you just had a,
There are all kinds of levels of stuff we need to let go of. So some we can do fairly quickly and easily. Some are going to take a lot more work.
So it's something that's been bothering me forever. I was wondering if it's been bothering me so long, why is it so quick and easy when you help me just now?
Because you're ready to be done.
When two minds work together, things always become easier.
that's okay.
Or what the Bible says is when two or more are joined together. So we have a few minutes for questions, discussion, thoughts. Anything you didn't understand or you wanted more clarification or more information about? The handouts you can do on yourself. You don't need another person to do it. And you can use either side of the body, it doesn't matter which side. One of my clients liked doing it both sides at the same time and found that worked better for them. Another client told me it worked much better if somebody else was doing the tapping and they could just focus on releasing. So if you got a friend or partner, you can do it together and see if that works better than just doing it on your own. But you can absolutely do it by yourself too. And I've seen it work in all different scenarios. Yes.
What is the session like with the rapid eye movement? What would a session be? I think for the student.
Like we did, we bring up the issue and you try and hold it in your mind. And as you do that, they will have something in front of you to go back and forth with your eyes like you do in rapid eye movement sleep is what it's really based on. Theoretically, we process stuff in our dreams every night through rapid eye movement. And if you see somebody dreaming, you will see their eyes go back and forth. It's very kind of spooky to watch there. I am going back and forth as you're dreaming, but that, the theoretical framework, and it's been studied and it has been shown to be clinically very useful. So you would work on that and you go back and forth, and then the reprogramming is that last thing we talked about, where you try to put it in a new frame, a new way of looking at it and thinking about it, where you define it differently.
See how you're thinking about it after you have.
Yeah, I haven't been trained in that, so I don't know as much about it as I do these others. But I know it's been studied a great deal and research has been done on it to show that it works. But those are the basics.
Great presentation, Robert.
Thank you, Robert.
So my last pitch is for my book. My lectures come from the book I wrote based on pamphlets I used to give out to my clients. I put them all together into a booklet. So this is one of the chapters in the book. It's really expensive. It'll cost you $1 to done.
Sorry, 3 holdings.
The soft cover is $6. I started at $5 and I was making 2 cents a copy then. Then they said printing has gone up, so a couple of times since then. So I don't get any money out of the book, but that's not what it's about. But if you like the talk and you want to hear more about various areas, I guess we're scheduled for another talk in 3 months, Rob? Well, we haven't set it up, but is that the plan?
Yeah.
So we can do self-esteem, spirituality, gratitude and music I put together as one. The other topics, forget. We've done, eat and all. Physical health and emotional health, family of origin issues, anxiety, depression, and other mental illnesses, and substance abuse and depression. So is there an idea of what you'd like to hear next?
Spirituality.
Family of origin issues? Anybody else have a preference? Well, I thank you for being here. If you have other questions, I'll be around for a few minutes.
Big things.
Oh, thank you.
So you got this every like quarter or something?
Yeah.
Just because.
You know, we flood frequency. Thank you.
I'll be in this one.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right, right, good job. Put in there, I appreciate it. Told me you got this before, so this is the beginning of the news.
So sure, the new year,
You do it every quarter.
It's games of the day. It's any- How about find out? Always there.
I mean, something, I don't know, yeah, it's there.
I know.
So, I appreciate it. I'll see you at the ring. I'm sure she was. All right, take care.
Jeez.
I knew that. No, I'm okay. Oh, did you? I started on it.
Of course, it was very helpful because it made me want to cry. But I don't like my dad that much. It's not just interesting. I might have for $5. I don't have $6.
Right.
What's up? Why not?
Feel better if you do.
Well, then, I got a job, another one at McAllister's, and I have other tip money, but that was my tip money after saving up it for 2 weeks and splitting it with everyone. $5 I feel very
Good job.
I'm scared. Okay.
Five. Yes, just one of them. Five minutes. You're not even holding. Yeah. Yeah. If you look a lot, you. Oh. Not too strong. Just the top of it, you hear. Yeah, she's so slow in my son. Yeah, she said, hey, can you hold on this while I do the chairs without even asking me?
So you think now?
No, cool, I'll throw them back.
Adding anything?
Yeah, her youngest ones are all her fuzzy babies.
He said garage. So I missed garage. I thought I don't have to.
I mean,
It can be kindness.
she's gonna,
Kind.
I'm not gonna hit her.
Kindness is underrated.
Up in the chair.
Knock you out. Incoming chair profit. Grandma. Yeah, I was like my drinks.
Well, I'm glad you're on Monday. I was walking around
Yes.
and just looking at all the pictures and everything. It's really amazing to really good. I just went about a week ago, and I just picked up a sandwich. I was. Sorry, gonna go around. Yeah. Right at Canada.
Whoops.
Hey, driving into that?
Um,
Are I driving into that or?